you want to take your Power Apps to the next level? In this episode of the Low Code Revolution, we're going to be showing how you can implement responsive design principles in your Power Apps applications. Stay tuned. Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Low Code Revolution. I'm April Dunnam, and today I'm joined by Matt Harding, who's a Power Platform Technical Architect at Computacenter. Hi, Matt. How are you doing today?
Hi, April. I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, so you're here today to talk with us about how we can get started building responsive Power Apps. Now, before we dive into that topic, one of the things that I like to ask all of my guests is, how did you get started with the Power Platform?
Sure, no problem. So I've been in IT for about 20 years now, and I started out with web development and moved on to data warehousing and analytics. And that was around the early days of mobile solution development. So my journey towards the Power Platform really kind of started around 2007 when I started to get involved with SharePoint. I was a full-time SharePoint developer. So over the following years, we kind of used SharePoint as a low-code platform, essentially. And got involved in all kind of things around consultancy, training, development, and building lots of solutions using SharePoint as a platform for development. That kind of led on to building business processes using SharePoint Designer. And then along came Microsoft bringing out Office 365 and moving SharePoint into online. And around that time, I sort of started to gravitate towards Power Automate as a workflow solution engine. And then it's later led me on to the other technologies, Power Apps, Power Virtual Agents, and Power BI. So I started making solutions in Power Platform probably around 4 years ago. And I found that to be a good kind of wrap up of all of my previous skills.
Awesome. Yeah, like so many of us, I think, in the community got our start in the Power Platform from SharePoint, kind of our segue into the Power Platform. I know that's kind of my background as well. So very cool to hear your story. So I'm really excited about today's topic, building responsive applications in Power Apps. So I'm kind of curious, can you explain to everyone that might not know exactly what we mean by a responsive application?
Yeah, sure, definitely. So I've got a short presentation that will just answer some of those questions. So responsive design essentially is a set of principles which aims to make your interfaces work across multiple different screen sizes and different devices. So we obviously live in a world where all of our solutions need to work across multiple devices, mobile devices, tablets, desktops, and we just don't know what devices our users are going to be using. So responsive design really gives us that ability to make an interface which can change itself to work across different devices. So apps that we make that are fully responsive can then adapt to make the most of the available screen space on that device rather than being fixed to a specific size, so that we can make use of all of the space on any device.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's a good concept. I think like we've probably all witnessed responsive design, like most modern websites, for example, implement responsive design practices, mobile applications that we use. So really cool to think about how we can kind of take our Power Apps up a notch and take some of these same design principles into our Power Apps. So kind of curious, what are maybe some reasons, though, that we might want to think about adding responsive design into our Power Apps? Because people out there watching might be thinking, well, I can choose the tablet or the mobile option in Power Apps, so why wouldn't I go that route versus kind of implementing some of these responsive practices?
Yeah, sure. That's a valid question for sure. So I picked on a couple of key reasons really why that's something that we need to be thinking about with our Power Apps. First of all, a responsive app will give a better user experience because it will make better use of the screen space that's available. Screen space is at a premium when we're developing some of these applications. We can't really afford to be wasting areas of the screen. So responsive gives us a much better ability to make use of the available screen space for our solutions. And secondly, it can reduce the number of apps that you need to make. So, if you did have an app and you had a desktop version and a mobile version, then you could have 2 or 3 different versions of the same app, which are optimized for those devices that you've then got to maintain and keep in sync. Whereas if you had a single app which is responsive, that one app could then work across all the devices in that organization.
Very cool. Yeah. So really long and short of it, like why it might be, it sounds like what I'm hearing is a little bit more work up front to implement the responsive design. In the long run, it's going to save you time because you're not having to maintain multiple applications, and it's going to make the user experience just a little bit more better. So it sounds like there's lots of great reasons to look at adding in responsiveness and responsive design principles into our apps. So with that, kind of curious to see how do we actually get started with building responsive design inside of our apps?
Sure. So I've got a demo that I'll move into in a second, but just for now, just to show how this looks on a mobile screen to see the problem that we're working around here. In Power Apps, when we're designing Canvas apps, by default, they use a scale model so that an app that you build using the mobile form factor will scale up to fit as best it can inside the device that you're using, the handset, for example. And depending on the shape of your screen, modern smartphones seem to be getting longer and thinner and taller with more strangely shaped screens. So you can see the diagram in the presentation there. We're wasting a lot of screen space with black bars at the top and the bottom because the aspects don't match from the app to the device. And we're actually losing about up to 20% of the screen area just to wasted space on this app. So that's obviously not a great way of going about doing that because we've got such a lot of screen space. And 20% is a lot of screen space to lose when you're trying to cram in functionality to an app. So what we can do with our apps to make them look more like that on the right, fitting the screen nicely across all of the areas, the top and the bottom, we can start to adopt some of the principles of responsive design to actually get our apps to fit the device neatly. Canvas Apps provides everything that we need for this. All of the features, all of the functions are there. We just need to pay attention to a few key areas, and we can make our apps really responsive.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to see some of this in action.
Great. Let's switch to the demo, and we'll have a look at this working in action. So here we are in Power Apps. This is a simple app that I've built. Let's scale that so that we can see it. There we go. So it's just a simple task app that I've produced. And at the moment, this app is not responsive. It's fixed heights, fixed widths, and therefore I'd get the same problem that with the app that I would have on other devices. So if I preview this app, you can see it looks fine here, but if I view that on a mobile device, it may not be the right shape to show that just like that. So we get black bars at the top and the bottom. So it's a few things that we can pay attention to here to make this work better across multiple devices. So the first thing we want to have a look at here is under settings and under display. We've got the scale to fit switched on at the moment. So if I switch that off, then I'm basically telling Power Apps that I can take control of the display, and I don't want it to do it for me anymore. So you can see that's gone a little bit larger. Let's scale that back. So if I now preview this, let's drop down the zoom slightly. You can see a couple of things here. The app is squished in the left-hand side of the screen, and there's a whole load of screen space that I'm not able to make use of because my app is fit as a fixed size at the moment. But you can see this banner that I've put on this app here is actually telling me the available screen space. So I've got a large display here, and I'm not making use of it because it's fixed to a certain size. The number in the brackets I'll come back to in a second, but that's the screen size as Power App sees it. So let's just exit from preview for the minute and just talk about a couple of things before we move on to fixing this and making it a bit more responsive. I'm going to look at the breakpoints on the app. So if we come and look at the size breakpoints here, which I've modified slightly. So they provide within Canvas apps the ability to test which of these breakpoints we're at, and it will return a number essentially. If we're under 600, it will return 1. If we're between 600 and 1200, it will return 2, and so on, up to 5 if we're greater than 2400. So that's what the number there. So it means we can then use that number to react to the screen size changing. So on this particular app here, like I say, not responsive at the moment, but there's a few things we can do to make that happen. So let's first of all worry about the width at the moment. So if we're previewing this app, you can see we're not making use of any of this extra width that's available here to the right-hand side. So first of all, I'm going to have a look at this header control, and I'm going to come to the width of this header control, and it's hard-coded to 640 pixels at the moment, which is not ideal. So I'm going to make use of the parent control. I'm going to set that to the parent.width, which is the width of the app. I'm going to just have a quick look at that. You can see straight away that control is making full use of the screen space. So I need to just do that for a couple of other items on the page. So I've got a gallery here. Let's do the same for that. Change the width, the parent width. I've got this label here with the screen sizes showing. Let's change that out as well. And finally, we've got a container which I'm using as a footer here. Let's change that width out for the parent width as well. So let's have a quick look at what that looks like now. So great, we're making much better use of the width of the screen now. So that would flex to be the width of the screen. Quite good so far. Quite a few things still just to patch up in it. We need to just fix the footer, and then we'll move on to fixing the height. So we're making use of this screen space that's still down the bottom here. So let's just quickly patch up this footer. My footer consists of a container with a couple of other containers within it. So this left-hand container here containing the home icon, let's set the width of that to be half of its parent's width. So we're splitting that bottom 50-50. So we're just going to use a function to look at the parent width, and then we're going to divide that by 2. So that container is now 50% of the available space on the footer. We'll do the same for the search cell as well.
That's super simple. It's like Power FX at its finest, right? Just being able to...
Everything can be a function. Everything can be a formula. Yeah, if it's a hard-coded number, it's not responsive. So it has to be something derived from somewhere else within the app. So when we talk about the parent, it's the parent of the control that you're looking at. So because I've got a container inside a container, when I'm talking about the parent in this situation here, it's the width of the parent container. So the parent.width, you can see it tells me it's 640 at the moment. Again, I want to divide that by 2. And you can see I've got a slight problem with this container here. It's sticking out to the right slightly, so I also need to control its X position as well, so that it starts off in the center of its parent. So let's go looking at the X. And again, that's a hard-coded number, which we know isn't going to work for responsive. So let's, again, look up the parent width, and let's divide that by 2. So that's neatly sorted out those two. I need to do a couple of things. There's a neat little formula here, which I use a lot of the time. I want to change the X value of that home icon so that it floats around. Again, rather than being hard-coded, I'm going to use a parent width. I'm going to remove from it the width of the icon itself. So I'm going to do minus self.width, and then I'm going to divide that by 2. I need to actually put some parentheses in here to make this formula work properly. And there you go, you can see the home icon then floats in the middle. So I'm taking the available space around the icon by taking out the width of the icon itself and then dividing that by 2. So I can copy that formula because it's completely control agnostic, and we can do the same thing for the X position on this. So with a few tweaks, we can really quite quickly arrive at something that's much better. So let's have a preview of that. So we're starting to look pretty good now. We've got a centralized header. Our icons at the bottom will float to sort of a position halfway in their containers. That's quite good. You can see we're at size 5 there in our breakpoints, which is the widest position that we can have. So there's a couple of more things to fix before we're kind of in a position that this is starting to look responsive. Width-wise, we're doing quite well. Just need to sort the height out now. So there's a few things we need to just tweak on the height. So the header's okay because that's going to be at the top left of the app irrespective, so that's not a problem. But the footer doesn't really know where to go at the moment. Our footer panel, it's, again, if we come and look at the Y coordinates for it, it's being told at the moment to sit down there at position 1036, but of course that needs to change depending on what the device is like. So once again, we're going to use our parent object and we're going to look for the height this time. Now that pushes it down out the bottom of the app. So to bring it up into position, I need to remove from it the height of the object itself. So I need to use self.height. There you go. So that brings it back into position, and now it's glued to the bottom of the app, irrespective of how tall that app is. So I need to do the same thing for a couple of other controls. This one here, for example, we need to set the Y position for that. And that's a little bit more complicated. So that's going to be the parent.height. And from that, we're going to need to take away the height of the header and the height of the gallery so that it sits underneath. So it's LBL header dot height, and we'll also deduct the height of the gallery, which is gallery tasks dot height. And not quite there. So parent.height, take away the header.height, take away the gallery tasks.height. So we'll come back to fix that one in a second. Made a slight mistake on that one. Parent.height, it's the it's the y-axis. Parent.height, take away the label header.height, take away the gallery tasks.height. Okay, I've made some kind of an error with that one somewhere. We'll come back and fix that in a second. The other thing that we need to just fix is the overall height of this gallery. So let's have a preview of how that looks at the moment. So we've got our footer sat down nicely at the bottom of the app. That's looking good. Headers at the top, making full use of the width. We've got a gap here that's not good, which under the bottom of the gallery. So let's go ahead and fix up the gallery. Let's go for the height on the gallery, which is here. So currently hard-coded again, that's no good. We're going to need to do another calculation, which will be the height of the app. And we're going to take away the height of the footer controls. So it'll be the parent.height, take away the LBL header height, and we're going to take away the LBL in dimensions height, and also the container for the footer panel dot height. Choose the right value. There we go. Perfect. So that's now sizing itself nicely. Let's go and look at the preview. So it's pretty much there. We just need to fix that details. To fix the screen dims. Let's work out what I did wrong there. So let's say parent.height. Start with parent.height and fix this. That's down underneath the bottom now. So we just actually need to take off a couple of things from that. So let's take off the container for the footer. Height, that should bring it up, and then we just need to take off the self.height.
I love that self function. It's so handy.
Yeah, it's the real key one. One of my key takeaways is to understand what the parent is and what the self is, because it's really, really key. Rather than when you're working with a formula inside a control, using self rather than referring to the control by its name is a really key thing to do. I just need to match some parentheses at the beginning, and I think that should work. There we go. Yeah, good.
Awesome.
So for now, preview this. A few things we can see here. We've got header, footer looking okay, and all the items stack up properly. And we can view this as the canvas size, and you can see it's all fitted together nicely. So one final thing just to show here, which is a really cool tip. If I take that back to Windows size, you can see we're not making good use of the width. The cards are hyperextended, and they're not doing a good thing. So what we can do here, we've all seen the setting over here for the wrap count. And if I change that obviously to 2, then my cards double up. But I want that to be dynamic as well. It's no good hard coding it to a specific value. So if I come to the wrap count value here, I can use a trick to actually go off and obtain that size. So if I come to the app.activescreen.size, you can see that's currently being returned as 2. What I'll do on this is actually just take 1 off of that, so that I always start from the position of 1. And you can see what that does is it now stretches out the cards across the app. So if I've got a wider screen, it will make use of that screen space. So as a final quick demo, I'm just going to save and publish that and view this
That's not that wrap count tip. That's gold. I'm going to be writing that one down, using it myself.
Yeah. You do sometimes find in the editor that it sometimes isn't 100% accurate, in that it doesn't always return the right number. But if you preview the app in the proper viewer, and then use the developer tools here to then come into this mobile view, change that to responsive, you can then see the app moving around in its responsive way. Now let's just check that one's working okay. Let's refresh that. There we go. Nice. So it's looking responsive now. So if I F12 and drag the handles, you can see that it's responding. So I'm now 3 columns wide, I'm now 2 columns wide, I'm now 1 column wide. So a few things I'd need to tidy up on that to make it perfect, but actually, as a quick test, that's not too bad. You can see the footers sticking to the bottom of the app and the dimensions are changing. So yeah, in a nutshell, those are the sort of the changes you'd be looking at to make your app responsive, making sure that none of the widths and heights or X and Y values are hard-coded. They need to be dynamic based on that parent and that self. So that's kind of a whistle stop. It's obviously a bigger topic than we can cover in this short time, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of how to go about it.
Yeah, that was amazing. It really showed just how simple it is to get started. I think a lot of times we talk about responsive design, we feel like it might be a little bit intimidating and like a lot of work, but really when you get down to it, it's just about width, height, X and Y coordinates, and just dynamically adjusting those, and that wrap count tip that you shared. So really good insights on how to get started with responsive applications and to really make your Power Apps look even better on the different devices that we have there. So we showed us a quick glimpse of how to get started and some of the basic concepts of containers and all that and how that works. For everyone else wanting to dive deeper and to look at adding responsiveness to their apps, do you have any resources or things to share for people that want to dive more into the topic?
Yeah, absolutely. So just have a quick look back at my presentation. I've got a couple of extra slides on the end just to help people out with getting some resources. So I've got a slide here with some tips and takeaways. Really, the first thing to think about is to think about what devices your app might be being used on. So if you're building an app for clients, ask them, is it going to be a bring your own device situation? I'm showing the screen here. Let me just share that again. There we go. So think about the devices that your app might be being used on. So, you might get some organizations that tell everyone to use iPads or iPhones, for example, and it's a fixed corporate thing, and you have a fixed screen size you can work to. A lot of organizations allowing bring your own device now with mobile device management opportunities and things like that. So you may not know the size of the device. It may be a mixture of Apple devices and Android devices, but if you know what you're building for, it's going to help you. So what I mean by partially responsive as well, you may know that your app is always going to be used portrait on a mobile handset. So you don't have to necessarily build for all devices. You could just make sure that your app works well on a mobile device and extends itself out properly to all of the corners of that device. So is the result worth the effort? As you said, April, earlier, there is a bit of effort involved in this, especially as the app gets more and more complicated and there's more and more controls. You have to really think about where those controls are being placed and how big they are. And if it's just a really simple app, just for someone to log a few items on that's only going to be used by a small team, it's really not worth the effort. They can probably live with a couple of black bars and it's not going to affect their experience too much. But if it's a really shiny app that you're rolling out to the whole organization that's going to get seen by the chief exec and it needs to look 100% right, then put the effort in, make your app responsive. And as you rightly pointed out, the real key to making your apps responsive is to understand what the X and Y value is, and the fact that you can put formulas in there to derive those values. They don't have to be numbers, and understanding the heights and the widths as well. Make sure that they're related to the parent container of the app. And understanding that parent and self is really key as well, to making sure that you can deduct the right number of pixels to place things properly. And just a final reminder, really, that any property that you see in a Canvas app can be a formula. Just because there's a number in there right from the start doesn't mean you can't type something in that derives it from anywhere else, from a data source or from as you saw me do, deriving deductions from the parent height of the app. So just on a final slide from me, if you wanted to get in touch with me, there's my LinkedIn information, which is the only platform that I'm really active on. There's a lot of further reading out there on responsive layouts. It's a huge topic. We've only really kind of touched the surface of it today, and it goes across all things, not just Power Apps, but web design and all kinds of other things. It's worth noting that things like portals and model-driven apps do quite a lot of responsive behavior for you. Obviously, Canvas apps give you that extra level of control so that you can control what happens to a finer degree. But this article that I've linked to here is quite good. And there's a lot of good content on YouTube, of course, to go and look at further learnings around responsive. That's all for my demo.
Awesome. Well, that was amazing. And, with responsive design too, there's so many improvements being made. Like we have responsive screen templates now that we could take advantage of too, that just make it the process even easier. And I like learning by example. So if you check out some of the Dataverse for Teams Power Apps samples that are out there, those all implement responsive design practices. So you can kind of dissect those and see kind of the patterns and stuff and how to implement responsiveness into your applications. This has been amazing, Matt. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and we'll catch you next time. Yeah, thank you. And we'll catch you all next time in the next episode of the Low Code Revolution.